So I've made some of these videos in the past of like what I wish someone had told me before I started music school, what I wish people had told me before I left music school, and I think I've touched on some of these things in videos, but I wanted to do one that was a little bit more like what I wish someone had told me in the earlier part of my freelance career, or like when I just started freelancing. And hopefully this will be helpful to you guys. Also, Junior is this amazing new brewery in Chicago. If you haven't heard of them and are in Chicago, you should definitely go check them out. Also, the sweater is the most comfortable thing in the world, so shameless free promotion for them. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the idea of like the big break, or how there's a like one gig is going to make your career and it's going to be the big break that you need and everything is going to be easy from there. That's a fallacy. It's not going to happen like that. Every time I personally have thought like, this is going to be my big break, it's been a show and it's been awesome and it's made me money and it's been fun and I've been able to play flute and all that other jazz. But it's not made or broken my career. There's never been one gig that has caused me to get all of the other gigs I've ever wanted, and there's also been no gig that has caused me to lose all of the gigs I have ever wanted. I think putting all the pressure on like getting your big break, getting your opportunity to play in like a super high profile gig isn't really healthy or worth it. I think for me, the networking aspect and after the show where I have played to the best of my ability, because that is important still, you still have to be able to like play and prove that you know what you're doing. But after the show, talking to people, giving out my cards, adding people on social media, and like continuing to create connections so that next time someone's like, oh, I need a flute player, you know, that girl that was at this show that like I talked to, like she was pretty good. Let's see if she's available. And then they reach out to me over whatever contact information I had given them, and then it moves forward. So while yes, each gig does tend to get me more opportunities, there isn't a make or break thing. I think it's more important, as I said, to be consistent, to be present, and to network. Along those lines, it's another thing of like being able to sell yourself and being able to talk about what you do comfortably is way, way more important than I realized. Obviously, I've been doing YouTube for a very long time. I do have a decent amount of public speaking experience, and I have a decent amount of experience talking to people as well, having been in music school for 6 years and, you know, being a relatively extroverted person. And it's not a difficult thing for me. I do understand that that is also a feature of me being an extrovert and me being comfortable with this kind of thing. But it is still something I have to actively do. Well, sometimes all I want to do is go home and like go to sleep after a concert, or I don't even want to go to these concerts sometimes that I'm just going to as an audience member because I'm tired and it's been a long day. Most of the time I convince myself that it's necessary, and I go and I talk to people, and I also talk about myself. I don't just talk to them about what they're doing, because while that's obviously important, you want to be able to engage with them and like have an actual conversation where they get to talk about themselves too. Part of it is also trying to sell yourself. I've made some very good friends. I've also gotten a lot of connections from talking about what I was doing, what projects I was working on, and the things that I was thinking about. The other thing for me is I wish I had known that it didn't have to always be work. I, very early in my career, was very, very, very work-oriented and very, like, career-oriented. And while obviously that's good, and to an extent, it did help me a lot, it did also cause me to sacrifice a lot of things. A lot of my personal relationships and a lot of, like, friends and having actual like human interaction outside of a concert or outside of me like trying to network kind of fell to the wayside, and that wasn't great. I obviously, like, 365 is kind of a symptom of that. That's something that I couldn't do anymore because I really changed my mindset. And well, I never regret that project. It's part of why I'm here today. I think finding a better balance is really important. And I wish someone had, like, kind of, I don't know. I guess I don't wish that someone had stopped me from doing 365, but I do also wish that someone had kind of gone like, hey, like, are you taking time for yourself? Less, don't do this, and more like, make sure you're, like, keeping your mental state in mind, and you're also still able to, like, do things that you want to. Is one of the things that I think a lot of people have to come to terms with is very early in your career, you will have to have two jobs. It's almost impossible to start, like, running in music. Unless you got very lucky and you went to school somewhere that, like, you had already set up a studio, and, like, you can kind of transition out of music school into a freelance career with the connections that you've already made. It is very difficult to make a good living and, like, have a comfortable life while not working a second job. And then that means that you have to balance your time and energy in a way that is very different than when you were in music school, or if you are just working in music. Obviously, even teaching and performing are two separate jobs, but because they're related, it's a lot easier to, like, balance your time. Like, teaching does allow you to develop your own playing as well, because you're also trying to identify weaknesses in yourself so that you can then help other people not do those things and work on those things. So it's very different when you're in a situation like I am, where you have a fully separate day job. I think I made some mistakes of taking a job that wasn't scheduled properly for what I wanted to do. I did used to work nights, and that was very difficult to be able to go to concerts, and it was very difficult for a lot of things. And obviously, over the last 5 years, I have worked to adjust that, and now I don't work weekends anymore, and I start a corporate job on Monday, so there's that. But I think, have to be a little bit more aware of, like, you can't just take the first job that comes to you if you have the ability to do that. Obviously, if you need the money and you have to sacrifice things, you have to sacrifice things. But I was, to be perfectly honest, in a position where I could have waited for a better job or just taken a different job, and I didn't. And while I don't regret that, because in the end it has worked out very well for me, the first couple years were very rough, and they didn't have to be. And I guess the last thing that I wish I had known is that, like, it's not going to be fun. Like, there's no way. Unfortunately, being a professional musician, you are making your, like, favorite thing into work. You're making the thing that used to be your escape into your work, and that's something that we've talked about a lot on this channel. But it is also going to be stressful, because suddenly, while music school is stressful in a very different way, you are relying on yourself to create jobs and create opportunities, and that is very hard, let me tell you. I think it really helps if you have a good community around you and you have friends around you, but if you don't, then it is even harder, because you're basically on your own, and that's very scary and very hard, and I totally respect that. Everyone's gonna make mistakes, just as I did. Hopefully you don't make the same exact ones that I did, but just know that it gets easier. You get more comfortable, you get a better idea of what you need to be doing and how you need to be doing it, and it will start actually happening for you eventually. It's a grind, and it really sucks, and I cannot overstate that. Like, it's not fun. But when things start finally falling into place and you get a couple gigs and people ask you back for things, that's super, super exciting, and it's really, really gratifying. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I know a lot of you guys are like in school or just out of school, so it is something that you're starting to deal with, and I want to be able to, as I always say, share my knowledge and share my experiences, because that's how we grow. So yeah, I hope you guys like this video. If you do, give it a like. If you're new here, subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.